Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with a currently reading update and some tentative reading plans for November. So you guys might remember that one of my reading goals or reading plans for this year is that I wasn't going to do TBRs except for a few of the things that I was hosting or co-hosting, because once I announced I'm planning to read a book, even though I know I don't have to read that book, I like stress myself out about it sometimes, which is ridiculous, but that's what happens. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to not do TBRs this year. I wanted to just mood read, and I've been loving doing that, but I kind of miss being able to talk about like readathons that I'm participating in, and you know, getting excited about things that people are hosting and joining in with a bunch of people all reading for the same project. And, you know, I want to support these readathons. I'm really excited about them, and I was trying to think of a way that I could still do that without feeling like I'm putting that pressure on myself. And I think I have an idea. Hopefully this works out. So basically what I'm gonna try going forward, this can be kind of, I guess, the test case for next year maybe, is I'm going to do more currently reading updates, which is something I've been wanting to do more anyway because I really like doing them, and I just kind of want to do more like casual chatty videos like that. But I'm going to tack on a section where I talk about some like things for the upcoming month that I'm excited about. So kind of like spotlighting some of the readathons that I will be reading for. And I think this month I'm mentioning more books than I probably will going forward, just because there were a lot of readathons I want to do, but I'm only picking like a couple books from each readathon to talk about, so I don't feel like I'm putting too much pressure on myself. I was going to start with my currently reading update, but I think I'll actually put that at the end. So I'm going to start off with a few like read-along books for things that I'm hosting. And the first one is Verdigris Deep by Frances Hardinge. My friend Hannah from Lynn Hermione and I are hosting our Frances Hardinge read-along. This is going to be our book for October through November. We are doing our live shows like mid-month, so even though you still have a month between books, it's like split between 2 months. So this is going to be the one that we have the live show for about halfway through November, and this is a reread for me. I'm really excited about this. This has to do with these 3 children who take some coins from a wishing well in order to like pay their bus fare or something, and they don't realize that there's a well spirit there who gets very angry that they have done this, and now they have to basically make amends for her. And I remember this one being quite creepy and atmospheric in places. There's a couple scenes I still remember very vividly, and I'm really looking forward to rereading this one and getting to talk to Hannah about it and anybody who joins in with us. And then for Past Classics, which I co-host with Taylor from Page Screen Taylor and Julia from Shakespeare and Such, this is another benefit to doing these like semi-TBRs going forward, is because I feel bad that I never really individually mention which book we're on for Past Classics. Like, I mentioned it in an announcement video at the beginning, but I don't really keep you guys posted. So this is good for that. But that's going to be Olivia by Dorothy Strachey, and Julia is hosting this discussion. I don't know if we have decided our live show date. I don't think we have, but this is super short and I don't know much about it. I think it's set at a girls' school and it involves a female-female relationship. And when was this one published? 1949. And then I also have a review copy that I am very, very excited about that I will be reading in November, and that is The Defiant Middle: How Women Claim Life's In-Betweens to Remake the World by Kaya Oakes. Kaya Oakes is a writer who I really enjoy, really admire. She writes about like feminism and religion. Specifically, she focuses on Catholicism, but she does a lot of other work as well. And I really, really love her writing and her perspective. Like I just really enjoy what I've read from her, both online and I'm also almost done reading a different book from hers that is nonfiction. Even though I haven't like updated you guys on it because I've been taking it really slow. But yeah, so this one is about how the idea of what women can be is very like constrained, and how society like tries to put women in boxes, even though a lot of the really important work happens outside of those boxes. And it's also about how like, I think like spirituality of like women on the margins and how important that is. I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of summing this up, but I will put a link to this book down below where you can read more about it. But I am really, really excited. I was very grateful to be sent an ARC, so I can't wait to get to this one. Okay, so now getting into the readathons that I'm going to be reading for in November. And even though I have ideas for these prompts, and obviously I'll be talking about some of those today, I'm really trying to focus this more like Mariana does from Mariana Mas Books, who I will link below. Her readathon philosophy is like her TBR is the prompts, and she can fill those however she wants, and that's kind of how I'm going to be thinking of this as well. So I'm going to be talking about the Islamophobia Awareness Month readathon. In the UK, November is Islamophobia Awareness Month, and this readathon is created and hosted by Hannah and Lynn Hermione, Maddie at Miss Maddie Chats, and Bushra at the Bookish Witchling. This is the first year they're doing it, and I'm really, really excited to participate. I'm also going to be participating in Indigathon again, which is created and hosted by Bear at Et Tu Brody and Michelle at Thor Wants Another Letter. Also, there's going to be a mini round of Historathon happening, which is hosted by Amanda at the Curly Reader and Lindsay at Lindsay's Little Library. They're switching it over to a November readathon rather than earlier in the year, and they're doing kind of a mini round this year to kind of tide us over until next year. And that's going to be only from November 1st through 10th, but I was kind of planning to just read historical fiction throughout the month, which Amanda said she's doing too, so if a host does it, it's definitely okay. Also, as many people know, Nonfiction November is happening again, which is created and hosted by a book olive. And finally, I'm also going to be, I think, casually participating in Believathon by How to Train Your Gavin. Like, Gavin is the creator of that, and I think I've heard that this is going to be like kind of the last round, or the last round where it's going to look like this. So it's bittersweet, but I'm really excited to be, obviously always excited for an excuse to read even more middle grade. Okay, so I will have all that information linked down below. I thought it might be easier to just talk about that all at the beginning, and then we can just get into the books. So let's get started. I have quite a stack here. Very excited about all of these. And like I said, I think this is gonna be probably more books than I normally will talk about for these like reading plans, or what am I gonna call these? It's like a currently reading update and like spotlighting readathons? I don't know. We'll figure it out later. Okay, so first I have Yusuf Azim Is Not a Hero by Sadia Faruqi. This is a novel that is actually set during this year, although I don't think it deals with COVID. I hope not. I think it's kind of like an alternate contemporary in a way. And so it's set during 2021, and it's set around the time of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And our main character is Yusuf, and the 20th anniversary has made the Islamophobia and xenophobia even worse towards him, and I just think this sounds like a really important and fantastic book. I also just feel like I'm gonna really love Sadia Faruqi's books. I actually own this book, another book by her, and a book that she co-wrote with another author, and I pulled those all out. So maybe this will just be like the month of me finally getting to them. I hope it is. And I'm using this for the, let's see, for the 2021 release prompt, for the middle grade prompt, and for a contemporary book that deals with Islamophobia. Yeah, I read like a few pages of this, and I already really love the writing. And I'm also going to be using this for Believathon for the 5-star prediction book, because I just feel like I'm gonna really get a lot out of this, so I can't wait for that one. By the way, they are abbreviating the Islamophobia Awareness Month Readathon to the I Am Readathon, so I might also use that title as I go here. And also for that readathon, I am very excited to pick up The Theft of Sunlight by Intisar Kanani. I'm using this for the book in a series prompt. I read Thorn a few months ago, actually reread it because I had first read it as a self-published novel, and I'm really excited that Kanani has gotten traditionally published now, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I remember liking it fine the first time I read it, but I really enjoyed it this time around, and I've heard that the second book is even better. Hana thinks I'm going to really love the main character especially, which has me very excited, and I definitely trust Hana's judgment. And yeah, this is a companion sequel. We're following our main character Ray, and I believe she has a club foot. I think she also gets kind of swept up into some court politics things that she was not expecting to, because she's not royalty or anything. It says there's a dangerous investigation, secrets that she uncovers, and yeah, I don't want to read too much about like the specifics of what this book is going to deal with, but I'm really looking forward to reading more from this author. This is one of those authors where I've only read one thing from her, but I feel like she's a favorite. I don't know, I just have a good feeling. Actually, I'm realizing that quite a few of these books could count for the 2021 release prompt, because this one can also, and I think Theft of Sunlight can as well. But next I have Unsettled by Reem Faruqi. This is a novel in verse, and our main character, I believe this is semi-autobiographical. Our main character Noura moves from Pakistan to Georgia, and it's about the adjustment period, and I believe that she joins like the swimming team, I think, and she's having some trouble fitting in with other students, but she ends up making a friend, and I think there's something to do with her brother as well. Like, it talks about some kind of sibling rivalry. So I tend to really love novels in verse, and I think this one sounds really wonderful, and I'm using this for the prompt of hijab on the cover. It's been so long since I've done like a TBR-esque video. I feel like I'm rambling even more than usual, so I apologize for that. So that's just like a sampling of what I hope to get to for the readathon. I have lots of other books that I would like to get to as well, but that's a good, I think, taster of what I'm going to be picking up, I think. And then starting with my Indigathon books, I really want to get to Sisters of the Neversea by Cynthia Lytwick Smith. This is a Peter Pan retelling, and it is obviously by a native author. I believe Cynthia Lytwick Smith is Muskogee Creek. Yes, she's a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and I just think it's a really cool, really important that we are getting a Peter Pan retelling that is by a Native author, because obviously the original novel does not have good representation of Native peoples at all. So I think this sounds really fantastic, and this is another one I read like the first few pages just to kind of get a taste of the writing. I love it. It's like so interesting and clever and a little bit whimsical, and I feel like it channels some of that feeling of the original Peter Pan while also being very much her own thing. And I don't know much about like what the particular premise of this book is about, except that Wendy and Tiger Lily are actually sisters, I think stepsisters in this book, and they end up going to Neverland. And then also another book that I have just been meaning to pick up, and I haven't for no good reason, that is Ancestor Approved. Oh, I forgot to mention that I am reading this book for the favorite color on the cover prompt because there is green on it. Okay, so back to this one, Ancestor Approved, Intertribal Stories for Kids, which is edited by Cynthia Leitich-Smith, and it has a bunch of different Native authors here, and these are all, I think, slightly interconnected stories that all take place at a powwow, and I'm using this for the host recommendation prompt because Michelle has really, really loved this book and has recommended it very highly, and again, I've been wanting to get to this one for ages, so this is a perfect opportunity. I'm also going to be continuing a series. This is Lovesick Braves by Pamela Sanderson. This is the second book in the Crooked Rock romance series. I'm using this for the Indigenous Joy prompt, and I'm really excited to continue this series. I read the first book as part of the Indigenous Romance Read-Along that Michelle was co-hosting, as well as Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. That's why I picked up the first novel, and I ended up really liking it, like a lot more than I thought I would at the beginning. So I'm very excited to continue the series. And this one is between Esther and Theo. That's who the romance is between. By the way, Pamela Sanderson is a citizen of the Karuk tribe. I don't believe the book ever identifies what tribes different characters are from. And also this is perfect timing because I was already planning on getting to this for the Readathon. And then Bethany and Michelle mentioned that they're going to be doing a kind of sequel live show where they read this book and discuss it. So this is going to be perfect timing. So I'm really excited for that. And then another book I want to get to that I don't have down for a particular prompt, but this is a Native author that I have been wanting to read for a very long time, and this book sounds really interesting, and that is Code Talker, a novel about the Navajo Marines of World War II by Joseph Bruchac. And Joseph Bruchac I don't believe is Navajo, I believe he is Abenaki. It doesn't say that on the back, but I think he is. And so the Navajo Code Talkers is something that still doesn't get talked about very much, and I actually didn't realize how little it was talked about until I was older, because I don't even remember what the book was on, but I read a book as a kid where in passing it had like a section on the Navajo Code Talkers, who were these group of American soldiers who fought on behalf of the US in World War II. I think it was in the Pacific Theater. And because very, very few people spoke the Navajo language, they kind of had this built-in code that they could use that nobody could crack. And they did these really important, really dangerous missions for a country that was not treating them very well at all. And they were a really, really important part of the war effort, but they were, obviously that work was classified for a very long time. But even after being declassified, I think a couple of decades ago, it's still not something that gets a lot of attention. So anyway, I'm really, really looking forward to reading this one. This is a historical fiction book, but it is very much inspired by the true story and the true events. Sorry, I feel like I am talking really fast, and I have had some comments recently that I sometimes talk too quickly, which I apologize for. I don't really know what to do about it. Like, that's kind of just the way I talk. But I do always have captions on my videos, so hopefully that will help. Okay, so moving into Historathon, I pulled a couple of books that I am very excited for. The first one I'm using for the prompt of a book that you feel like you're the last one to read. And I think this one definitely counts. That is The Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. The paperback of this book finally came out in the US like a few months ago, and I had like pre-ordered it and I still haven't gotten to it, even though I've been excited about this book since I heard about it. So this is obviously historical fiction, and I think it is set around the time of World War II. Yes, it says 1940s in England, and basically Jane Austen's house, like where she actually lived and worked, is falling into disrepair. Like, nobody really takes care of it. Her legacy is not really being like stewarded, I guess. And then this book is about a group of people who get together and decide to fix that. And I've just heard really, really wonderful things about this book, that it's really heartwarming. And I think it's going to be a book that really speaks to me as a Jane Austen lover. And I think it's also going to deal a lot with how stories can really bring people together, which is another thing I love. Then another one I hope to read for Historathon. I'm a little bit nervous about this, just because I did not really enjoy the other book I read from this author. But that is The Garden of Lost Secrets by A.M. Howell. So the book I read earlier in the year was The House of 100 Clocks. I'll link the wrap-up where I talk about it, but that's probably been one of my most disappointing books this year, because I thought I was gonna love this author, and I just really didn't click with that book. But this was the book of the two I own from her that I was most confident about. So I hope I like this one more. It's set in 1916, and our main character is a girl named Clara. I think, yeah, so she's sent with her aunt and uncle during the war. So this is a World War I book. That one was World War II. You know what, this one has a short blurb as well. I'm just gonna read this. When she reaches their cottage on an enormous country estate, Clara is plunged into a tangle of secrets. I've been saying Clara because, isn't that, I think Clara is how you say it when it's in the UK. Is that correct? Maybe not. A dark locked room, a scheming thief, and a mysterious boy who only appears at night. Clara has a secret of her own too, a terrible one about her brother fighting in the war, and as the secrets turn to danger, Clara must find the courage to save herself and those around her. So, tentatively hopeful, but also worried. And I'm using this for the prompt of a middle grade book for Historathon, and for the middle grade readathon, I'm using this for the prompt of a historical fiction. I love when prompts can just like swap like that. Okay, and then a couple of books that I hope to read for Nonfiction November. The goal of Nonfiction November is just that you read more nonfiction than you normally read, and or just to read one nonfiction book during November. It's a pretty chill readathon. The prompts are words that you can associate with pretty much like any book you want. Like, they're very open to interpretation. And I have pulled a couple that I definitely want to get to. I did the math, and I think this year I'm averaging almost exactly 2 nonfiction books per month, which I'm pretty happy with, actually, for somebody who never used to read nonfiction. So I think my goal would be to read like 3 to 4 books that are nonfiction in November, although I could definitely read more than that as well. Anyway, so one I want to get to is Artemisia Gentileschi and Feminism in Early Modern Europe by Mary D. Garrard. This was a present from my lovely friend Mary Margaret from MM's Musings, and I just am really, really excited about this. This is about pretty much what it says in the title. It's about Artemisia Gentileschi's work and how that fits into feminism in this time period. Mary D. Garrard is one of the foremost scholars on Gentileschi's work, and I am really looking forward to reading more from her. I really loved her essay in the collection that I was gifted by another friend, Yvette from Book Cave. Can you tell my friends know my taste? But I really loved her essay in that collection, so I'm really looking forward to reading this full-length novel, or not novel, this full nonfiction book from her. And this also has some really beautiful like painting, what do they call those? Not imprints, I can't remember the word. But yeah, this is a really beautifully put together book, and I can't wait to read more about Artemisia's feminism. Like, right up my alley. I'm using this for the prompt collection. This could fit for several reasons. It is a book in my collection. It is a book that deals with like art collections in a way, because it's about an artist. And also it is part of my growing Artemisia Gentileschi book collection. And then the other book I want to talk about for Nonfiction November, again, this is just a sampling of things I want to read, but I don't actually have that yet because it is a pre-order of the paperback edition that is coming out sometime in November, I think near the end of the month, so hopefully I have time to get to it. But that is Humankind, and I just realized I forgot to look up the author. Okay, so it's Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman, translated by Elizabeth Manton and Erica Moore. So this is a book about like human history and how kind of like refuting this assumption or this idea that we have had for a long time that humans are the worst, basically. And they definitely can be, but I think this book is about how, like, taken as a whole, there's actually a lot more kindness and selflessness in the human race than many of us tend to think. And actually some of the examples that specifically I thought were really interesting that this book is going to talk about is how some of these like famous studies about how like awful humans are and how like selfish humans are were actually not conducted very well. Like the results aren't necessarily useful because of how they were handled. And a couple of the ones that really stuck out to me is he mentions the Stanford prison experiment, which is a big one. That basically, and I remember like learning about this a few years ago, just like in passing, that the way that experiment was set up, it kind of naturally selected for people who would be more likely to be violent and to like hurt other people. And then similarly, I think he talks about the, was it Milgram? I think it was Milgram, but I could be misremembering. Like it was basically, the conclusion was that the majority of humans are willing to do almost anything to hurt another person if somebody in authority tells them it's okay. And so like I don't know exactly how he's going to approach that one, but that was another trial that like it has this famous this famous outcome that you learn about in like psychology classes and things that actually is not, it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny because of the way that trial was conducted. So anyway, I just think that sounds really interesting. He also, I think, mentions, I think this is the true story that Lord of the Flies was based on, but like he mentions like how this like group of English boys, like schoolboys, were shipwrecked on an island. And if you've read Lord of the Flies, it goes very badly. But in the true story, none of that happened. Like, these kids actually like worked together and helped each other survive. And it's like a completely opposite story than what a lot of people think. So anyway, I just think this sounds really fantastic. I think this is a kind of, it's a very hopeful book that I definitely need right now. I think a lot of us need right now. Oh, and I'm using that for the treatment word prompt because this is about how human beings treat each other. Okay, and then I'm just gonna finish off with a few of the middle grade books that I hope to get to. I think this one, because there's 30 prompts and you're kind of supposed to use like some kind of like random number generator. It's actually designed to be used with cards, but if you don't want to print out the cards, you can just use a random number generator because all the prompts are numbered. And I wasn't originally going to do that, but I'm thinking now that might actually be kind of fun to kind of, you know, if I'm stuck for a book to pick up, I can use that. But anyway, just going to talk about a few of the middle grade books that I really want to get to. One of them is the book that I never know how to say the title of, because depending on if you're looking at the US or the UK copy, one of them's a series and one of them's a title. Anyway, this is, I think it's just called The Book Wanderers. It's the first book in the Pages & Co. series by Anna James. And this is one of those series, I'm embarrassed because this is one of those series that I think I'm gonna love, and I actually own multiple books in the series. And I still haven't gotten to it. I think one of the reasons I've put it off is because lately I've had not the best luck with very popular middle grade books. Like, I read and love a lot of middle grade, but I've noticed that a few of the ones that are like the really hyped ones, you know, don't always work out for me. So I think I've been a little nervous, but I really do want to pick this up. This is about a girl who named Tilly, who her grandparents own a bookshop and she lives with them, and I think like characters from the books like come out of the stories and she goes on an adventure, and this just sounds really lovely. I read the first chapter of this like way back, like months ago, and I loved the cozy vibes, so I'm really looking forward to, I hope, finally getting to this one. It has been an embarrassingly long time that I've been meaning to read this. Oh, and that is for the prompt of a Gavin recommendation. I also want to get to Playing the Cards You're Dealt by Varian Johnson. This is a new release. It actually just came out last month, I think, or this month. Also blurbed by Jason Reynolds, who's one of my favorite authors. So right off the bat, I'm feeling good about this book. Yeah, so this is a contemporary book, and we're following our main character, Anthony, or Ant, who's a 10-year-old boy, and he's very excited that now he's old enough to, I think, like play in the spades tournament that his city does every year. And he's really excited to compete with his best friend to play cards together competitively. But then his best friend gets grounded and he can't do it. So he ends up, his partner ends up being Shirley, the new girl in his class. And he's not sure he's happy about this at first. But then he ends up becoming friends with her and they end up having a lot of fun playing together. And one of the things that made me really excited about this book is it says it deals with toxic masculinity. And I just think that's really wonderful, like for a book with really young characters to start tackling that idea so early. Like, I just think that's fantastic. I think the story sounds great. I'm excited about the characters. Again, Jason Reynolds blurbed it, so I just think this sounds like a great time. And I'm using this for the contemporary book prompt for the Believathon. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about in this little TBR sampling is Baraka Beets by Maliha Siddiqui. And this one I also could have talked about for the I Am Readathon. I could have used this for the Job on the Cover prompt or 2021 release. But I'm really excited about this. I'm counting this for Believathon for most recent purchase. I don't think this is exactly my most recent, but it was one of the most recent books that I bought. And I am so excited about this. So we're following our main character Nimra, who is Muslim, and she is actually transferring from an Islamic school to a public school for the first time, and she's really struggling. People are not being very accepting of her, and her best friend is also kind of like abandoning her a little bit, and so Nimra ends up deciding to join the band to try and like win her friend back. I think her friend is in the band, but she's always grown up hearing that music is forbidden in Islam, so she's really torn. She doesn't know what to do, so she eventually decides that she's gonna join the band, but just until she gets her friend back, and then she's gonna stop. But she ends up really loving it, and she starts making friends, and their band ends up doing a concert to benefit refugees, and so now she's torn between what she wants and also, you know, she doesn't want to disappoint her parents, and I just think this sounds really lovely. It's blurbed by several authors who I either love or I've heard really great things things about. Like Raji Labraka has loved this book, so that makes me excited. And Amina's Song by Henna Khan dealt with a somewhat similar idea, like music in Islam and how different practicing Muslims have different perspectives on that. So I just am really excited to see how this book explores that, and it just looks really lovely, so I can't wait to get to that one. Okay, so that was much longer than I thought it was going to be. I forgot how rambly I get when I'm talking about books I'm excited about, but now I'm gonna just really quickly go over the books that I'm currently reading. So I'll start with the one that I don't have with me, and that is a library book, and I'm reading Fire with Fire, I think it's called, by Destiny Soria. So this is a Latinx-inspired fantasy book, a contemporary fantasy, that deals with dragons, and we're following two sisters as our main characters. One of them is Dani, and she is really good at fighting, like at the training that she's doing to prepare for fighting dragons, but she isn't as interested in it as her older sister is. Like, she wants to have kind of a normal life, and I'm really happy that we get both sisters' perspectives in the novel. So we have chapters from Dani and also from her older sister Eden, and Eden she's a really hard worker, and her technique is very good, but she doesn't have the like natural ability that her younger sister does, so it's very frustrating for her to see Dani not really caring when Eden would do almost anything to have this natural gift. And so like I said, I'm only a couple chapters in, but I already love and connect with Eden a lot. Yeah, just like the rule follower who has, it's also implied she might have some kind of like OCD or anxiety. I don't think that's been stated on page yet, and again, I'm at the very beginning, but I'm interested to see how that is handled throughout the book. And what I remember from the premise is that I think one of the sisters, I think it's Dani, she ends up like getting into a confrontation with a dragon, and then rather than killing it like she's taught, like she's supposed to, she ends up making friends with it and realizing that maybe the things they were taught about dragons aren't actually true. But Eden doesn't know this. She just knows that her sister has gone missing, and so she ends up teaming up with some sketchy, possibly, sorcerers in order to try and get her sister back. Yeah, so only a couple chapters in, but I'm really enjoying that one so far. Like I said, I'm really loving Eden. Like, Dani is really interesting as well, but like, I just love Eden. Like, she just has those older sister vibes that I just really see myself in some ways. And then I'm also reading a book that is not officially on my Goodreads list, because I'm not, like, it's not on my currently reading shelf because I don't want to feel like pressured to rush through this one. And that is The Making of Biblical Womanhood by Beth Allison Barr, How the Subjugation of Women Became Gospel Truth. And I am buddy reading this with my friend Mary Margaret from MM's Musings. I'm only a couple chapters in, and you can see there's quite a few tabs. This is fantastic, and this is definitely a book I'm glad that we're kind of making our way through slowly, because there's a lot to think about and a lot to process. And this book's whole premise is that these ideals of like biblical womanhood, like what the Bible says a woman is supposed to be, are actually later interpretations. Like this idea of biblical womanhood is not biblical at all. And I just think this is fantastic. I think the author is doing such a good job of like using examples and using other theologians, and yeah, I'm really loving this. I would be extremely surprised if this did not end up in my best of nonfiction list for the year, because I just think this is really fantastic, and I've heard really good things about it too, so I hope it continues to get that kind of attention. But really enjoying that buddy read, and yeah, obviously lots of thoughts so far. And then one book that I only started yesterday, and this is another one I'm like only a couple chapters into, and I want to read this like around the end of October, like beginning of November, like around the time of Day of the Dead, because I think, like, I don't know if this book actually takes place on that day, but thematically I think it fits. Anyway, I haven't even told you what it is yet. That is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This is a book that like I've heard only glowing things for, and I'm very excited to continue reading it. I didn't get a chance to read it last year when it was, I think, seasonally appropriate, so I really want to get to it this year. As I said, I'm only on the second chapter, but I already really enjoy this. We're following our main character, Yadriel, who is a trans boy, and he's trying to prove to his family that this is who he is, and specifically that he can be a brujo, like the other men in his family. And so at the part I'm at, he has just done the ritual that is supposed to kind of, I think, confirm him as a brujo, and the other part of the premise is that he is trying to bring back the spirit of a cousin of his in order to prove that he has these magical abilities and that he should be accepted as a brujo. and he accidentally brings back the school's resident bad boy ghost instead. And they end up developing feelings for each other, even though they really don't hit it off at first. Yeah, and like I said, the point I'm at, I'm just very early in the story, so Yadriel's cousin has only just died, so very beginning of this one as well, but really liking it so far, and I'm happy to finally be getting to this book. And then I am also currently reading another nonfiction book that I think I'm just gonna kind of take it slow, like ease my way through, and that is Steeped in Stories, Timeless Children's Novels to Refresh Our Tired Souls by Mitali Perkins. I am loving this book so much. This is another one. I'd be very surprised if it didn't end up in my favorite nonfiction of the year. So Mitali Perkins takes 7 classic children's novels, and she makes the case that not only is it acceptable for adults to read children's novels, but it is necessary. She talks about how important it is to celebrate and respect children's stories, which obviously resonates very much with me. And she also, just even at the very beginning of the book, she's doing a really excellent job of grappling with these classic novels, less than progressive ideas. Like in some ways they are ahead of their time, but there's a lot of other places that just don't age very well. And she talks about how you can love something and still critique it, or how you can get something positive out of something and still critique other aspects of it. So I really love that so far as well. And just like as a, I guess as a marker of how much I'm getting out of this book, there's like questions at the end of each chapter, and I am not somebody who tends to do those when I read nonfiction. Like, I will think about the questions, but I won't like sit down and write out my answers, you know? But I'm doing that for this book, so. Okay, and then the last book that I'm currently reading is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This is a fantasy book that is inspired by like German folklore, and it is a retelling of a goose girl, and it follows the maid as the main character. Her name is Vanya, and Vanya is the goddaughter of Death and Fortune. And she has taken the place of the Princess Giselle, and she's been using this opportunity to steal jewels from rich people, and she's been trying to get enough money that she can escape her godmother's control forever, but she ends up pulling a heist that goes very wrong. She steals from one of the other gods without intending to, and she gets cursed. She starts turning into precious jewels stone by stone, and she has about 2 weeks to break this curse before she turns completely to jewels and dies. And so she's trying to figure out how she can scrape together enough money to escape while also breaking this curse. And then to make matters worse, there is an overeager like junior detective or something who like he shows up and starts investigating all of these mysterious thefts of nobility, like, or of the jewelry of nobility that have been happening. And I am how far into this one? I'm actually not only 2 chapters into this one. I'm on page 158, and I am loving this book so much. Like, I even mentioned this on Twitter. It's like, this book feels like one of those like first chapter favorites, you know? Like, I only read the first chapter and I'm like, oh, I love this. Like, I think this is gonna be a favorite of the year too. So like, my currently reading is going great. Like, I'm not finishing things right now, but I'm sure loving them, so that's nice. But anyway, yeah, I just really am loving this book. I love the writing and the atmosphere, and the like folklore and religious elements, and I'm really enjoying Vanya as a main character. I think she's the character type that a lot of authors do, but it doesn't often work for me, because she's that kind of morally gray-ish and like very self-centered, but you understand why, and she does still have goodness in her. Like, and I think that's one of the things that makes me like really enjoy her character so much, is she's not just selfish and she's not like just an anti-hero. It's like, we see even from pretty early on that there are some lines that she doesn't want to cross, or there are some people that she doesn't want to steal from. And anyway, I'm loving this. So that is it for my currently reading update slash here's some readathons happening next month. I don't know what I'm gonna call this. Yeah, so let me know how you guys feel about this kind of format. I promise they won't all be this long. Like, I know I talk a lot, but even for me, like, this is longer than it's going to be usually. And maybe for you guys, these videos won't feel that different from my normal TBRs, but I think it's gonna feel a lot different for me, and I think it's really gonna not put pressure on me, like from myself, I mean, which is the goal. So anyway, let me know any of your thoughts. Let me know a book that you're currently reading that you're really enjoying. Just talk to me in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!